Oh, apparently there's audio problems. That's great. Um, wow, that's a great way to start off the first episode of Darkest Realms. Okay, let's start over. Thank you for pointing that out, gentlemen. I do apologize. But okay, this is our first premiere episode of Darkest Realms. Not really going off as fine tuned as I'd hope, but I'm on a I'm a tear here. I'm on a rant, and well, I guess we're gonna have to start over. So here we go. Today's episode is addressing the origins of Halloween and many things mysterious, paranormal, and unknown. I'm your host, Devious Dave Rose, and I would like to yet again thank all those who have chosen to spend their time with us here today in the chat, as well as those that might be listening elsewhere. We have Latino Heat, we have It's Bullsy, we have Extreme Shaft, and we have It's Steve Callan. Happy Halloween to you too. So after a false start and really going hard, I've got to recompose myself and try to get back to business. What's today's episode? Our inaugural episode here on Darkest Realms. Well, we're talking about Halloween. We're talking about the mysterious, supernatural, and unknown. And we're talking about both Halloween and what is currently attributed with Halloween. So let's get back into this. So, when it comes to Halloween, a word that's been derived from All Hallows Eve or All Halloween is an Anglican or Western Christian adaptation to the Celtic harvest festivals that were long existent well prior to the creation of Christianity. And although spelled Samhain, it's pronounced Samhain. So this festival is where Halloween gets its roots, at least in Western culture, although harvest festivals that also recognize the veil between the worlds getting very thin, as such, allowing for spirits to cross into this world or for us to communicate with those in the next world, are replete throughout the world. We see this very much demonstrated this year, being celebrated on November 2nd, El Día de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. Not just in Mexico is it a big thing, but it is a very consistent festival that is celebrated in various ways throughout Mesoamerica. And it certainly provides a lot of insight into the fact that the ancients knew that this time of year, not only in relation to the end of the harvest, but also a time where we see nature itself die off, trees losing their leaves, harvest is no longer possible. We see also a veil thin when it comes to this world that we live in and the next one. And replete is our history with these sorts of events of individuals being able to speak to the dead at these times of years, or to experience somebody that may have long left. So, certainly, Halloween is a time during the year that is recognized by civilizations throughout the world for thousands of years in different ways, but it is one of many names of a time during the year where clearly there is some sort of clearing when it comes to connecting to those beyond the earthly realm. Now, obviously, we understand that nowadays it is a celebration that has trick or treat associated with it, and kids, as well as people like Tommy NC 2010, go out and get candy. But it actually relates to how you're supposed to appease the spirits at this time. Because the veil is thin and spirits are coming out, they are coming to houses, as the Celtic tradition has stated, but many others as well. This is why you have, during the Day of the Dead, you have a lot of people providing sweets and goods left for the dead on altars to appease them. Same with trick or treat. So another example, thousands of miles away, not connected at all, where you appease the dead by providing sweets and goodies to tell them that you are not a threat and that you are recognizing their passing. But we also see, for example, jack-o'-lanterns, which is actually something that started with beets and with other vegetables. Squashes, for example, where they'd be hollowed out and you'd have a sort of lantern that would exist. And these were eventually associated with Halloween because these vegetables, as they actually are, were imported from the New World. So these are things that eventually got adopted into the cultures that acknowledge and celebrate Halloween. So, and also I will say this, I should have said this earlier, but I'm more than willing to take any calls tonight, any questions that you might have about Halloween, about any topics that we're discussing, or if you want to share your particular story. Perhaps you've encountered a UFO. Perhaps you've seen a ghost. Perhaps you might have telekinesis. I don't know, but during this time, during this stream, we're more than willing to take calls at any point of the show. Not at not at a later point, because we have many topics to discuss, and any call at any point is certainly accepted, because we can go all night, which we may just do. So, to continue on when it comes to Halloween, we have obviously its pagan origins as well as its Christian adaptation, and obviously we have All Hallows Eve being set the day after, which will be tomorrow. But we also have, as I said, cultures throughout the world that not only celebrate the end of the harvest, but also this time of year where there is clearly something that is untraditional and that all cultures seem to recognize as being a time where ghosts, spirits, whatever you wish to call them, are much more accessible, are much more prevalent, and are around, are present. So let me just go back to the chat here, check. Shout out to It's the Costanza there in the chat. But let's get, although we could go for hours about further information regarding Halloween, all the different festivals that are associated with it, its traditions, and so forth. Let's continue onward with discussing things that are associated with Halloween, specifically those of the paranormal. Let's start off with vampires, because vampires are certainly associated with Halloween these days. And it's not only just for dress up purposes, it's the unknown, the mysterious, the horrific that is associated with vampires. Now, as we know from that graphic alone, we've got Nosferatu and Dracula. And they're some of the first interpretations of vampires in a film form. But the actual story of vampires goes back a long time. And this is what's so fascinating about this. We have stories of Lilith. Now, if you don't know, there are texts that were excluded from being included in the Bible because they contain information that the people at that time did not want included. That includes the book of Enoch, but it also includes information regarding, or books that include information regarding Lilith. Lilith is said to be the first wife of Adam. Eve was not his first wife. It was Lilith. Now, Lilith, and I'm just going to show the graphics here. There we go. Lilith apparently was made at the exact same time as Adam. And instead of being made of his rib, according to the scripture, and this is allegory here, if you're going to believe it's literal, then you're missing the point. But allegorically, they're saying they came from the same place and time, the same clay. That's also a term that's been misinterpreted, but we're not here to talk theology. So, as soon as this creature was born and it was separated from Adam, and there's a lot of cultures out there that do discuss that man and woman were once united, still allegorical, but there's something there that leads a lot more. It's complicated. But we have a situation that fits that bill, and we have a splitting of the two consciousnesses. You've got Adam, and then you've got Lilith. Lilith immediately goes off and attacks a city and starts to kill people. Because of this, the Hebrew god curses her and forces her to endure certain things, and there's a big list of that. And then at that point, God then decides, or the God, the Elohim, the Hebrew God, chooses then to split split a rib from Adam, and thus create Eve, the subservient spouse or mate of Adam. And there are other what are called apocryphy books, or apocryphic, I believe, that basically explain that Lilith was the serpent in the Garden of Eden. And again, I do recommend people don't take things literally. Yeah, one of those few times I'm saying not literally should. But yeah, there are things that are allegorical, that they're telling more of a story. And there may be some truth mixed into that. There may be some sort of physical presence, but there are obviously things that are being said in this story. So these are let me actually hold on. Let me look this up here for a second here. I get kind of annoyed sometimes. I do apologize. My voice is still recovering. Okay, well, I guess maybe incorrect there, but apocrypha, regardless. There's no verb that actually, you can't use apocrypha as a verb. Well, you know what, in English you can do anything you fucking want. That's a simple fact. But yes, that's what I was trying to do, and there's no word that really I can find that describes it. But it was bothering me. I'm a fucking grammar nerd. What can I say? The grammar nerd is quite interested in that. But back to discussion here. So we have this story where the first vampire, more than just a succubus, but an individual that could fly, that sucked men's blood, that would sort of induce hypnotism, which has been associated with vampires as well, was at least at this point prevalent in Sumeria, which is about 4,000 BC. Approximately. I'm always a little bit skeptical about some of the ages because humanity's a lot older than is being admitted. But regardless, if we're going to go official terms, 6,000 BC. So, sorry, 4,000 BC, so 6,000 years ago. But these stories obviously continue, and they became something that were quite common in folklore. So, for example, basically this became big, especially in Europe. In Eastern Europe, there was big examples of, and let me just go back to the graphics here. I'm going to represent this proper. There we go. But yes, especially in Eastern Europe, there was many scares and many reports of vampires, which is extremely strange because it was not primarily featured there, but certainly had a lot of prominence amongst the people and was certainly being a concern for them. So you'd have situations in these areas where bodies would be exhumed from the ground, and they would stab a stake into their heart just to be sure that they weren't a vampire. And eventually, Bram Stoker made things quite popular with his story of Dracula. But even still, we have Vlad Tepes, or Vlad the Impaler, who was improperly associated with Dracula. And well, I should say, the story of Dracula is not even loosely based on him. They just took his name and used it, or Bram Stoker used that to try to create a story. Dracul means son of the dragon. And his whole family line there, Vlad Tepes, was always associated with the dragon. So that is what Dracul refers to. So when it comes to the story of Dracula, obviously it's been very, very manipulated and such. And this guy, Vlad the Impaler, as they call him, fought off a bunch of Muslim invaders prior to the victory in Vienna that the Polish actually allowed to turn the tide against, and it actually happened on September 11th, which is another reason why that date is used by terrorists. But they were able to repel all these Muslim invaders. But Vlad the Impaler attempted to do that and was successful many times, but eventually he was not. And this is, again, a big reason why he is misinterpreted as being a vampire, because he would just rightfully take the heads of his opponents and stick them on pikes, flourish them throughout his properties, and any invading army that would come in would see the heads of their compatriots there on pikes. So, although bloody, it certainly wasn't this fantasy that he was some sort of blood-sucking demon. Now, do blood-sucking demons exist? Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And we can tell that from ancient history. We can see that these sorts of things have been prevalent for quite some time. Now, let me postulate this. This is something that's been discussed for quite some time. But the correlation doesn't seem to have been made on many. Neanderthals, for example, or Neanderthals, if you want the proper pronunciation, were nocturnal hominids. Hominids, creature that stands up. Bipedal, uses 2 feet. That's what they were. Were they human? No, they weren't. Now, what we can understand from some of the unbiased history that's out there, we know that they were cannibalistic. We know they were nocturnal. We know they were, although intelligent, quite savage. And about the same time where Neanderthals encountered Europeans, because they enroached into Western Europe, where the Cro-Magnon man was created and existed. At that point, we also see the domestication of animals, well, specifically the dog. Now, dogs are very good at being able to smell and also are very protective. And it seems extremely probable that Cro-Magnon man, our ancestor, was able to domesticate dogs specifically to be able to defend against nocturnal attacks by a nocturnal creature like the Neanderthal. And there's a lot of information that seems to be coming up these days and presenting itself to prove this matter. And this is very much probable where a lot of a shared unconscious or subconscious psychosis comes, or at least a fear comes that is present in mankind. Why? Same as the stories of the Grand Flood, the great floods of prehistory. The flood of Noah is one of many. But these shared incidences actually have a psychological effect, and many people have talked about this. Shared psychological effect on the human conscious and subconscious. These things are actually epigenetically passed on from father to son to mother to daughter for generations. The fear of the dark, it's not just a one-up, oh, it's a child, they're scared of the dark. It is something that has been transposed and gone through generations and generations of people, because it is actually much deeper than genetics alone. It's subconscious, and there's a shared collective understanding of this. So whether it be scared of the dark or large animals with big teeth, these are things that are collective subconscious all recognize, no matter where we are in the world, whether it be you grew up in, I don't know, sub-Saharan Africa or in the mountains of Finland, or the beaches of the Caribbean. These things all connect to us. The same thing with the connection to a big grand flood. These are passed on to us. These events were so traumatic for our ancestors that they got embedded into our psyche, our collective psyche, and genetically as well. But although it's transposed epigenetically, but that's a different story. But it goes for generations and generations. Plus, we have the stories that are told over and over again to us through our legends, which recount these stories. And for the longest time, many humans had no written language. So what could they do to pass on these stories? Say them verbally, orally. And that is how many stories have continued to be told. So let's talk about now, let's talk about demons for a little bit. Because we are talking about Sumerian times. Let me just see if I can bring up this graphic here. Got it somewhere. Also, if you enjoy what you're watching and you'd like to see more, feel free to donate to us at, on PayPal, Devious Dave Rose, no, let me correct myself. On PayPal, d.r.b@live.ca. So if you'd like to see more of these shows, feel free to donate. So now we're going to talk about demons. So King Solomon of Israel was said to have at least controlled 72 different demons. And these are some of them. So I'm gonna actually make this a little bit bigger here. Let me just change one thing. Skibbity bop. Make it a little bigger. Come on, bigger. No, that's not it. No, that's not it. So what I want to bring up with this is, although this is sort of dismissed in this day and age, we have people from thousands of years ago that certainly understood and believed this and actually quantified this, cataloged it, drew the images. There's a lot more to this that unfortunately mainstream society doesn't want to accept. But it's certainly something that is prevalent and has been talked about for quite some time. Let me just change the graphic here. You can see some more of these demons. But if you didn't believe in them, why would you put the effort so much into doing this? Showing these types of demons. And naming them and qualifying them, providing attributes to them. So these are just a few of the 72 demons that Solomon, King Solomon of Israel, supposedly identified. And let me just show a few more. But yes, when it comes to these sorts of things, I don't necessarily think you should believe the mainstream. be open-minded, but also understand that our ancestors probably knew a lot more than we believe them for. You can believe whatever you want, but I can tell you one thing is that they certainly they certainly knew a lot. And when you look at things today, even through a scientific mindset, you see that they certainly had an understanding of things that we're only now getting a grasp on. But let's move on, actually, to the next sort of creature that is associated with Halloween. Just bear with me here. Almost there. No. There we go. The werewolf. Now, werewolves are some creatures that are referred to as being both man and wolf, and that they can turn from one state to the other, usually because there's a full moon. And it's also called lycanthrope because lycan is the Greek word for wolf, and thrope is I think it's man or change man. Can't. I gotta look up my my ancient Greek, but regardless, essentially, these are creatures that have also existed for time immemorial because they've been reported for the longest times. And we've heard about these legends of these shape-shifting creatures in folklore, in ancient history, and even in contemporary times, where somebody will actually say, as you know, even though somebody might doubt them, they say they saw somebody turn into a wolf, or they saw something that looked like a werewolf run across the street. So these sorts of stories have actually been going on, like I said, thousands of years. But with the advent of European folklore being spread quite a lot with the printing press and so forth, we have stories of these shape-shifting wolfmen type creatures that proliferated throughout Europe. And these also build on what has been talked about for quite some time in local stories and folklore, heritage, and so forth. Shout out to Joey Z in the chat. So there is quite a lot of evidence that seems to indicate that these creatures have been around for quite some time. And because especially their prevalence in folklore, it tells us that certainly they were around, and the people were quite aware of them. Let me see if I can find another graphic here. Hold on. Nope. Not it. Sorry. Thought I had this. I guess not. Okay. But yes, so the legend of the Wolfman, the werewolf, has been around, like I said, thousands of years. The Proto-Indo-European culture did describe these creatures, shape-shifting. Again, we find this a lot, and this is something that we can't dismiss. Okay, so these are folklore stories. Granted, I'll give you that. But why do we continue to encounter so many stories of these creatures that can shape shift. Now, humans aren't stupid. They can see another human, and if that human changes to another form, or we see a dog, a pig, a horse, and it changes to another form, we're not stupid. We can understand that. Might have happened 5,000 years ago, but guess what? That person probably was smarter than us, to be quite honest, statistically speaking, and genetics and all that. But they're not lying, especially when a lot of these stories are literal, not figurative, not allegorical. They're saying they literally saw a wolf turn into a man, or a man turn into a wolf. And unfortunately, we these days certainly dismiss that. But these are stories that have been told to us for quite some time, and our ancestors know what they're talking about. So let me just get back to this here, and I've got some footage actually. Bullseye says werewolves are badass. Well, let me show you a little bit more. Before we continue, I just want to go through a few things here. During the Middle Ages, obviously, again, another time where these stories, because they were easily spread, started to gain foothold amongst all these people throughout Europe. And shared experiences just reinforced this belief. A rightful belief, nonetheless, but a belief that was also sort of tainted by religious views and such. Now, even the Asian cultures actually have stories of people who would, shamans that would perform long rituals and then voluntarily be able to transform into the humanoid Kurt Adam, meaning wolf man. That's the literal translation. And since the wolf was a totemic, a totem pole, totemic ancestor animal of the Turkic people in Asia, they would be respectful of the shaman who would be in such form. So this goes a lot deeper, and we just can't dismiss it as somebody who just skinned a wolf and decided to wear their pelt. This goes a lot deeper because we have evidence of creatures. Now, what they are exactly, that's the question. Are they skinwalkers? Are they wolfmen? Are wolfmen skinwalkers? Is there, what many cultures believe, this ability for these creatures to assume just about any form they want? Well, it seems that some people do believe that. Now, let me show you a few of these images here, and you tell me. Again, Skype lines are open if you wish to call in and discuss this. And we couldn't do these shows without you, so please consider donating to us on PayPal, d.r.b@live.ca. Now, let's take a look at these images here. Remember, all donations are anonymous unless you say otherwise. Be sure to include a comment or, some sort of statement if you do make a donation. And now OBS is wanting to mess up with me. Okay. So just bear with me here. Okay, so here's what I'll do. Well, I try to fix this. We have this image here. This is supposedly a wolf man. And this, I believe, was taken in rocky area, I believe in Arizona. But this does not match anything close to what would be a wolf or a bear. But you can see that it certainly has features that don't match either. And it's up to you to decide what you're seeing right here. But these are the images that were taken. Let me just see if I can add this here. Yeah, that should work, but now look at this here. You have a dog, and then you have some huge animal there. Is it playing the whole thing or what? Let me bring up the stream here. I don't know if it's playing the entire thing. Find the other one. Well, this is from the same video. Show this real quick. This thing is, this is way bigger than a wolf. This looks the size of a horse. Where is that video? There it is. Dog, wolf attack dog. Wolfman attack dog. Hold on. See if I can. There we go. And play it again. Hold on. Let me zoom in. There we go. Hey! Watch it again. Hey! Tell me what that is. Look at that thing. Look, that's not. I've been around wolves. That's not a wolf. Hey! 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 That's not even a dire wolf. Dire wolves are, well, they don't exist no more, but they were big. That's not even close. So, you tell me what that is. Let me check back the chat. He says that stupid fuck should have gotten his dog. Well, you never know when you're going to encounter, one of these dog men. And if you're familiar with history, you'll know that, for example, Rome was founded by by two brothers, Romulus and Remus. And they were found by a wolf, a female wolf, and that they were suckled by her. Now, I suggest you look into this, because I have. There are countless cases, and I mean countless cases, where a child, for some strange reason, disappears from where they're camping, where they're living, and they state to their rescuers when they're finally found that they were with a bear, that a bear just decided to live with them, decided to take care of them, sometimes for up to 3 days. But strangely enough, the bear would be able to hug them. They'd also be able to bring food to them. There's a very famous case here in Ontario that occurred, and there's many more, actually. But the same story is, it was a bear, and they kept me company for 3 days, and they fed me, and they brought me food. Stories of children being pulled out of their tents and carried away by some sort of furry creature that the kids described as a bear. But a bear can't hold a child under its arm and then run away on 3 legs. Not possible. But this is what we've seen. And there's many cases of this. So let me just get back to this here. My window closed up. Sorry. What's going on here? There we go. Back to the chat. All right, so the next, and we're building onto this because of the fact that here we go. Here's another image, I believe. I don't know if I showed this. So that's the size of a horse. But come on, where are the images? Bear with me. God damn it. Well, actually, might as well talk about this. Hold on. Well, we already saw this image. I'll show it again. That is supposedly a wolf man there, or a dog man. And very often they continue to say the same thing in witness reports, is they see red eyes. It's a very scary thing, because many people have said the same thing of these sorts of demons or interdimensional creatures, which it's very possible this is what they are. Have the ability to have their eyes look red when you look at them. And that includes skinwalkers. So, let's talk about the skinwalker. These things have been reported for thousands of years by the Native Americans. The most recent would be the case where, at Skinwalker Ranch, a tribe cursed another one with the presence of the skinwalker because of the way they were treated. And ever since, supposedly, these creatures have been inhabiting this land. But although I can't necessarily attribute it to that native curse, we can certainly see right now that there is something going on at Skinwalker Ranch. There's evidence, documented, filmed, photographed, that shows portals opening and these sorts of creatures crawling through, not just stepping through nonchalantly, crawling through, and then scurrying off and disappearing in the wilderness. We have multiple cases not just at Skinwalker Ranch, but other locations where these have been viewed. And they will incessantly attack a house throughout the night. Eventually, as the sun comes up, they disappear. But when the house is inspected, they find massive damage, scratch marks, tears in the exterior of the house. We have cases where these creatures have attempted to hypnotize others and lure them into the forest. Many such cases where somebody will hear the voice of a loved one or even themselves beckoning them to go further and further into the forest. And very often the individuals that have spoken about this have said that they already had a feeling of dread prior to hearing that voice come out from the wilderness and coax them in. And although some of them stated they had this desire to go in, they had better judgment. They had this knowledge that it wasn't safe, that they couldn't go there, that they shouldn't go there. And they pulled themselves away and they ran away. But there are many cases throughout America alone where, whether it be in national parks or in wooded areas, that people experience the same event. A voice calls out for them to go deeper into the forest. A feeling of both calmness and almost hypnotism. And then yet also a feeling of dread. An understanding that this is wrong. Something doesn't feel right. And they quickly tear away. But there are other stories of individuals who, there's one, for example, a Hollywood producer who is filming and producing a series in the outdoors. During the middle of filming, stripped down to nothing, naked, and then just ran off into the forest. And he was never found again. And people tried to stop him, but something had come over him. And it was, yet again, in a region where many other strange disappearances occurred. Let's quickly go back to the chat. Arushan Chu says, sorry, Dave, just popping in to say hi on my vacation with my son. I hope you have a good one. Thank you for joining us. So, skinwalkers seem to be something that not only the Native Americans were quite well aware of, but also even in contemporary times. There's something that is so far-reaching where you have somebody like Robert Bigelow buy a property and set up dozens of different observation posts and countless tracking systems to observe and document the phenomenon. And although he did go bankrupt and sell it, the organization that did purchase it continued and is now even going further in documenting this. So there's clearly something there, but this is just one of many locations where these sorts of creatures are said to go. So, like I said, if anyone wishes to call in, feel free to do so. We've been going for about an hour and 4 minutes. I am sort of aiming to go for about an hour when it comes to Darkest Realms. But let me just look at my list here, check a few final things. Oh, yes. So, yes, I've talked about the Skinwalker multiple times, and well, a lot of people have said don't go into the forest if you're not aware of what's out there, especially at night. But let's finish this show off by talking about haunted dolls. Now, this is something that many do dismiss, but it really shouldn't be. So let me just change this here. Oh, hold on. There we go. All right, so haunted dolls are certainly something not to scoff at and not to ridicule. So the image that you're seeing right now is of Annabelle. And the story of Annabelle basically became famous with the release of the movie The Conjuring and the Annabelle films. So the real doll is a Raggedy Ann doll that was made around the 1970s. And this doll was given to a nursing student called Donna by her mother. And Donna and her roommate, Angie, would often return home to discover the doll had changed positions or moved rooms. They'd also find handwritten notes scrawled onto parchment paper asking for help. So these paranormal investigators called Ed and Lorraine Warren indicate that the behavior went on for nearly a year before they became involved and ultimately took Annabelle into their care. In 2020, rumors began to circulate that Annabelle had escaped the Warrens' occult museum, and a panic was eventually assuaged when the Warrens' son posted a picture of Annabelle safely in her case. But this is one of many examples where there is a doll that, for some reason or not, has been imbibed with some sort of paranormal power. Let me just get to the next one here. Hold on. Where is it? There we go. Now this story is a very interesting one. This is the story of Robert the Doll. So he came to the Otto family of Key West, Florida in the early 1900s as a gift to their youngest son, Robert. The boy and the doll then became inseparable, and the child would often be found laying blame for his misdeeds on the doll. The family eventually alleged that the toy often seemed to change positions on its own, and they even claimed that when their son was alone in a room, they could hear him talking with the actual doll, and that the doll was actually responding in a different voice. So after this kid's death in 1974, the doll Robert was given to the East Martello Museum. So visitors who actually take a photo of him without his permission claim to experience terrible misfortune as a result of their actions. And currently in the museum, he is surrounded by letters of apology and admiration. And this is one of many examples. I can't remember the doll name, but a doll that was imbued with voodoo magic, and it also lies in a museum in New Orleans. And the same thing occurs where if you do not approach it with respect and just take a photo without asking permission, then you experience some very strange occurrences. And they're usually quite detrimental. So these are things that certainly shouldn't be dismissed. Uh, there's the doll Ruby, who's a porcelain doll that currently resides in the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and Occult. And apparently, according to her original owners, belonged to a little girl in a family who died while holding the toy. And after that tragedy, she was passed down through generations until coming to her current location. But visitors who do see her often report an overwhelming feeling of sorrow. So these things certainly are psychic sinks, if you will. They attract certain energy because they've been imbued with it. And as such, when you encounter them, you get a recollection of the spiritual emotion that has been connected to that item. This is another reason why you have apparitions that appear in certain areas like a jail, like a mental asylum, where because of the bad feelings that were imbued at the point that they occurred, that now these structures are inhabited by these spiritual creatures, whatever you wish to call them, and these patterns of repetition where this spirit, for example, has to continue to go along and along with the experience that they had while they lived. And these are things that we encounter with almost every single example of ghost apparitions and inhabitations. So, I think we've done a good job here for episode 1 of Darkest Realms. I'm glad that I could talk about a few things Halloween related. If anyone would like to call in, we'll give it another couple of minutes just to see if anyone wishes to call in, say anything that they might have experienced when it comes to the paranormal, and then we'll wrap up the show. But I hope your Halloween has gone well, that your tummies didn't get too hurt from any candy you might have gotten. And yeah, remember, the veil is still fairly thin. And we're not even close to the midnight hour. So who knows what kind of spooktacular evening you might encounter. And I know there were a few people out there that spoke to me privately that said that they had as well experiences with the paranormal. And I would love to hear from them if they would be available to call in. But it is Halloween evening, and who knows, perhaps they're trick-or-treating. Perhaps they're out at a bar. Perhaps they're keeping their lights off and trying to avoid any trick-or-treaters. Who knows? But I certainly enjoyed talking about all these different aspects of Halloween, all the different spooky things associated with this time of year. Let me just change this graphic here. And there we go. That should work. There we go. yes, the seasons are changing, and well, winter is coming. But this is certainly a time to reflect both about the living and the dead, which is a big thing when it comes to the Day of the Dead, el Día de los Muertos. Unlike a lot of Western civilizations, this view of Mesoamerica on death is a lot more understandable, and there is reflection both on the passing of others but on what they accomplished. As such, it's not a celebration of death, it's a celebration of life and what was accomplished in that life, which is why there is so much recognition of their dead, and they thus decorate graves and places of worship with a lot of festive, colorful decorations and celebrations of life. Because we have to understand that both life and death are part of the same coin. So, despite the fact that, hold on a second here, despite the fact that it's viewed in a certain way, by certain cultures, there are other cultures that see it quite differently. Not sure why my graphic's not showing up, but that's fine. So, on that note, we've been going on for about an hour and 15 minutes. I think that's good for episode 1 of Darkest Realms. Hope you guys enjoyed this little impromptu show, and glad you tuned in. On that note, we shall see you next time.